If you have an employee whose insecurity is starting to affect their performance and becoming an energetic drain on you or the people around them, then this video is for you. Now, I'm not talking about someone who's lazy or entitled or needs to be fired. I'm talking about someone who cares and has real potential. They ask if they're doing okay. They check before they make decisions that they know how to make. They need you to tell them you're not mad at them all day. And at some point, the dynamic goes from, being their boss to becoming an emotional support vending machine, where the expectation becomes they insert anxiety and you dispense, no, you're doing great, and here's your change. So in this video, I'm going to show you a really weird thing I did with an employee that sounds insane and honestly would make any reasonable HR department shit their pants and label me as toxic. But it actually helped this employee go from one of the most energetically draining people in all of my companies to one of the most energetically uplifting team members in 60 days. And now she's leading what will probably be the most profitable department in my entire organization. If you don't know who I am, my name's Luke Murray. I'm a former physician, entrepreneur for the past 20 years or so. I've done about $100 million in revenue during that time. Currently, I have a portfolio of companies that does about $3 million a year. And I make these videos because I'm trying to have ambition without the bullshit. And I'm guessing you would like that too. So here's the situation. At one of my companies, we were opening up a brand new branch. And I had one frontline employee who had started taking on more responsibility recently. And I gave her a shot to launch this new branch. She had no formal management experience. Actually, she lived a pretty hard life, including multi-year stints in prison and heroin addiction, hard life. So as a result, she had a lot of old stories about who she was, what she was capable of, and whether someone like her was allowed to be trusted with something this important. In fact, when she originally applied for her frontline position, she saw that the pay we were offering, which is $20 an hour, was so high that she almost didn't apply because she didn't think she was qualified. So obviously I saw more in her than she saw in herself, which is why I gave her the opportunity. And she did fine opening this branch at first, but pretty quickly her insecurity started to affect her performance. She wasn't bad. Actually, she was doing fine, but she kept second guessing herself and needing reassurance. And one of these long conversations really that felt like they boiled down to, do you like me or am I good enough? And had nothing to do with what we needed to get done, like hiring staff, setting up accounting systems, like real business shit. She kept coming to me with decisions I needed her to make, or at least attempt to make, so we can deal with the outcome and keep moving. And as her boss, this was not only taking up clock time, it was taking up emotional and cognitive bandwidth, which I talk about in another video. Like if you can't delete it from your brain, then you didn't delegate it. And because she didn't have the confidence in herself to make these decisions, I would ask her to do something and think, fuck, this is going to take me 25 different questions back and forth about this issue because she needs reassurance the whole time. And that's draining because I'm still spending emotional and cognitive resources on a task that I supposedly passed off. And it's not that I don't care about her feelings. In fact, I really encourage people in my companies to share what's going on emotionally. And a lot of these conversations start with hey, can I share my feelings with you? Can I talk to you about something? And of course, at first, I'd always say yes, because the feelings aren't going to go away just because I say, no, you can't share them. People have their emotions and they need to process them. And I would like for my company, more than anything else, to be a place where people know that their feelings are welcome and accepted. But there's a difference between sharing your feelings with someone and abdicating responsibility for those feelings to someone else. This is where I want to share my feelings turns into, I want you to make this feeling go away. And at first, of course, again, I'd help her sit with those feelings. I'd ask her, hey, what's the story you're believing that's creating this feeling? I'd listen, but eventually I had to say, hey, I'm reaching my limit here. Your feelings are totally welcome, but I need you to take responsibility for them instead of asking me to. I also need you to run the play, girl. But then I realized, I don't know if she actually knows what taking responsibility for her feelings means. I mean, shit, I had only heard that maybe a year ago. And so if someone would have told me that a year ago and I would have felt anger from something they said or fear or excitement, I would have thought that person was the source of it, which meant I also thought they were responsible for apologizing for making me angry or calming me down if they made me excited. So eventually I sat her down and I said, how are you feeling about this position? And she said some version of, I don't know, I'm worried. Think I'm not doing a good job. You're going to get mad at me. And so I said, okay, tell me what you're actually afraid of. So she like thought for a little bit. She's like, I'm afraid you'll think I'm doing a bad job. And I was like, no, that's still too vague. Tell me the exact sentence you do not want me to say. Obviously, people don't usually want to like nail down that sentence, but eventually I got it out of her. She said, Luke, I think you're going to say, I think you're the worst employee I've ever had. I regret giving you this chance, and I'm going to fire you next week. And so you know what I did? I got up. I went out of the room. I closed the door. And then I knocked, said, hey, can I come in? And I came up to her. I said, hey, I got some rough news for you. I think you are the worst employee I've ever had. And I regret giving you this opportunity, and I don't want you to work here anymore. You're fired as of next week. I did exactly that. And if you take that out of context, you can feel the buttholes over in HR just clenching up. But then I stopped talking. I didn't explain it. I didn't like take the edge off like, wasn't that kind of crazy? I didn't rescue her from the feeling. I just sat with her and let her pretend this was real. And maybe even a piece of her did think it was real. I don't know. I didn't give her a warning because I wanted to generate that the emotions she was running away from and asking me to process over and over again in real time with me there. So after a while, I asked, what's happening in your body right now? This is, if you've ever been to therapy, this is what they do. She noticed like pressure in her chest, like nausea in her stomach. And so I said, okay, go ahead and sit with that for as long as you need to. I didn't try to fix it or intellectualize it. I didn't turn it into some like motivational poster with a mountain on it. I just sit with it. Then I asked, if I actually meant what I said, if that was all real, what would you do after you've sat with those feelings, those sensations? So she thought for a little bit and she's like, I would call my sponsor. I would probably go to a support meeting. I would go to the gym. I'd call my partner. I'd probably take a nap. I'd also remind myself that I've been through prison so I can handle a boss not wanting me to work somewhere anymore. And like, as she's going through each of these, like you can see her face just slowly change, her body relax, and see her just realize like, oh, I can survive this. And that realization, like that process of feeling, and then what would I do? And then like the lights going on of like, I can survive this, was the point. Because she was acting as if she couldn't. And no, she didn't enjoy, like I wasn't like, was that fun? She's like, oh, I love that experience. But within a few minutes, she sure as shit was enjoying the freedom that it created. And over the next few days and weeks, we both had a different working relationship. She could trust that I would tell her how she could improve if there was something to tell her. But in the meantime, she could know that I already trusted her to make the decisions I hired her to make. You may have heard this phrase, fear exists in the vague, but not in the specific. And I think that that's true-ish, but it's incomplete. It doesn't mean that there's no fear in the specific. Like, there was absolutely fear in that room. She felt it in her chest, her hands, her stomach. The difference is that once the fear becomes specific, she could actually process it. And after we said the worst thing out loud, the rest of the conversation got easier because I didn't have to bullshit her and pretend everything was perfect. Everything was not perfect. Her insecurity absolutely was affecting her performance. It was frustrating and annoying, and it was making her less useful than she could have otherwise been. But now we could talk about the real situation because we'd already practiced the worst case situation, and it wasn't that. So in that case, I was able to say, all right, what do you think you're doing well? What do you think you need to improve? And because she'd already faced the worst sentence, she could answer honestly. And that's where leadership actually begins. I don't think it starts by offering unearned reassurance, also known as bullshit. I don't think that fixes insecurity. I think that feeds it. I care about my employees. That's why I'm willing to sit down with them while they feel the thing they're most afraid to feel. And yes, having someone sit with something that uncomfortable can be one of the cruelest things you could do to a person, or it can be one of the most loving things you could do for them. And the difference, of course, is in the consciousness that this comes from. And you got to be honest with yourself, because depending on the day or even the moment in that day, it could come from either place. So I have to pay attention. And in this case, the reason it was safe enough was that I'd already put in the time to show her that I welcomed all of her feelings. She knew I was saying back the sentence she had just given me. The little theatrical move of like walking out and walking in and sitting down and being all serious, that was just to make the scene real enough for her to feel, but not so real that it destroyed the trust, and gave her a way to feel the emotion without the actual consequence happening. And that's like the practical part of what I'm telling you. You're not just naming a fear in a vague intellectual way. You're giving the person a contained way to experience that emotion, stay with it, and then watch them process it and make a plan. And that requires trust. But trust doesn't come just before this kind of conversation. It can also be built through this kind of conversation if the person feels that you are with them and not against them. Again, it came from a place of I wanted to serve her. One way you build that trust is by showing them their emotions are allowed here. Again, over time. So you're not saying stop feeling that, or you're not saying that's stupid. You're not saying there's no room for that in this company. You're saying, yes, that emotion can be here. Now you still have to own it and run the play. The point actually is to say the bad news in the worst way possible, because if that sentence is what is controlling them, then that sentence is the thing that you need to meet. So if you have an employee whose insecurity is holding them back, don't just reassure them and don't become their therapist. Ask them, what is the exact sentence you do not want me to say? And if there's enough trust, help them face it and then feel it and decide what they would do if it were true. That's not tiptoeing around feelings. That is standing with someone while they learn they can survive in their own feelings. And once they know that, they can stop using you for reassurance and start using their talent to run the business. Remember, we're all just making up stories and choosing which ones to believe. So try to choose some good ones. What do you think? Have you ever had a boss, a friend, or a partner try something like this on you? Or have you tried it with someone? I'd love to know how it went. Let me know in the comments below. And thanks for watching.